Can artificial intelligence help boards govern effectively? We have three eminent panelists today, Professor Sadhugopan, Mr. Gopi Katragada, and Mr. Sameer. Our moderator for today is Mr. Ajay Nanavati. A brief intro of all the panelists. Professor Sadhugopan, of course, doesn't need an introduction, but we will still introduce him. Professor Sadhugopan served as director of IIITB for 22 years. He also taught at IIT Kanpur, IIM Bangalore, IIT Madras, and several international universities. He serves on the boards of many corporates, PSUs, and educational institutions. He is a member of the Karnataka Knowledge Commission, Chief Minister's Vision Group, and NASCOM. Professor, welcome to this session. We have Mr. Gopi Katragada. Thank you, Gopi, for being there. He is the founder and CEO of Mail-in Foundry, an AI company with a vision to transform human experiences and industry outcomes. He's an independent director at Bosch and ICICI Securities. Gopi was a chief technology officer and innovation head of Tata Sons. He was also chairman and managing director of GE India Technology Center. Welcome, Gopi. We have Sameer Dhanrajni, Chief Executive AI Curate. He is a globally recognized AI advisor, business builder, evangelist, and thought leader, known for deep knowledge, strategic consulting approaches in AI and analytics space. To introduce Mr. Ajay Nanavati, former Managing Director 3M and former Chairman Syndicate Bank, as part of the IIM Advisory Council. And welcome, Mr. Nanavati, and over to you.
Thank you, Greta. Good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon to everybody and to my fellow panelists. So first of all, I'm a little surprised why I was invited to moderate this panel. You know, I'm a dinosaur out here, so I'm not quite sure what value I can add on a topic which is very much the flavor of the month. The good news is that I'm surrounded by three gurus, so that's going to make my job very easy. All I have to do is sit back and listen. But in the interest of all the other people joining in, I just thought I'd spend a few minutes outlining the format that we plan to use, and also maybe just share some context setting comments. So first of all, as far as the format that we plan to use, is that we will, each of the panelists will spend 3 to 5 minutes giving their opening thoughts, opening comments on their views on the subject. At the end of each panelist's opening comments, I will probably jump in with a couple of clarifying questions. And then once we have been through that round, we will have a few questions thrown to the entire panel as a whole. And then we will ensure that we leave enough time at the end for Q&A. Typically, I prefer an interactive forum, but in the world of online and in the interest of efficiency, we will keep all the questions to the tail end. Please don't hesitate to start posting your comments on the chat group as we progress. I will then consolidate, because I'm anticipating there will be some very common questions, and then I will club them together and either throw them to the panel or to individuals within the panel, depending on the question. So the topic of the day could not be more timely. As you all know, the whole theme of corporate governance is getting a lot of traction in India. We have had a number of situations across corporate India and across the startup ecosystem. And again, it's a global phenomena. It's not just a India phenomena, but it is a subject that we as a country need to face and address. If we are to attract foreign investment in India, we are going to start seeing everybody's going to look at the quality of corporate governance. This happens to be a subject near and dear to my heart. spent a fair amount of time on this very subject. However, what the topic of the day today is really how artificial intelligence is going to impact corporate governance. So we're going to limit the conversation largely in the context of corporate governance, not in terms of the broader applications of AI, but we'll keep it focused on in the context of corporate governance. So I think we all realize you can't nowadays, you cannot open the paper without reading some reference to AI and how it's going to transform our world. And as I said, we have a combination of an academician, a practitioner, and an advisory consultant person. So we've got three perspectives from the perspective of somebody who's academician, practitioner, and a advisor consultant. So I'm sure this is going to be a very insightful conversation. And I know all three of them are personal friends, and I know all three of them have views which they're not shy of voicing. So you can rest assured there will be a lot of candor on this conversation. So, again, as I said, we are going to use the next, we're going to kick it off. And the sequence I'm going to follow is as I was telling my panelists when we were getting ready for this session in our preparatory talk, my father used to always say, it's beauty before age. But in this case, we're going to go age before beauty. So I'm going to request Professor Sadhugopan to open up the conversation and share with us his perspectives on how he sees AI influencing the quality of corporate governance in India. Maybe we'll talk about it globally, but with a greater focus on the Indian context. In fact, a couple of boards, Professor, that I'm on, one of the things that I am doing is I'm actually running sessions for the board members on educating boards on AI, because in my opinion, the average age of the Indian board or corporate board is about 56 to 58. And, so it's really important that the boards get educated. So in fact, I've already initiated a program that, at least on the boards that I'm on, to run programs to educate the board on how this will impact us. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Professor, and leave it to you. Take it from there.
Thank you. Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, IMB. Thanks, Grita, Ganesh, and every one of my panelists. Okay, so I will take an academic perspective. So let me my summary is just one line. Thanks to AI, particularly generative AI, a lot of things in the corporate governance area. So the key is simple things will get simpler and in fact get automated. The harder things will get harder, in fact, make life fairly miserable to all of us. Okay, so that is the key message when it comes to corporate governance. So what I will do in the next couple of minutes is I'll take two examples, both taken from the academic perspective, but the corporate governance view, and then kind of illustrate as to why I am making this statement. Is that fine, Ajay?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good. Thank you. So let me start with the simple ones. Every university, I'll take it from the academic example. Every university vice chancellor or the director of an institute, we all go through our own corporate governance, right? And we have our own regulators like UGC, IACT, etc. So what is important from a corporate governance point of view? Every student, you could have thousands of students. Every faculty member, you may have hundreds of faculty members. We have to ensure corporate governance is done through every one of them, every touch point. So we have to ensure that every student who got admitted has gone through the process. There was no kind of compromise made on that. At the same time, things were transparent, and every student who got in knew what he is expected, which school, which course he wanted, and what are the expectations are set. And then the classes are held on time, the exams are held on time, the records are done transparently, and the grades are distributed transparently, and the grade cards are prepared until their graduation. There's a graduation degree certificate. So throughout those years of stay in the institute, at every touch point, there are issues of governance which must be dealt with carefully. So we do have officers involved at this point in time, but really what happens today is you have packets of information. So you have controller of examination who has something, you have the deans who have something. So what happens is traditionally people have been managing this through what is called enterprise integration. So we have army of experts who will do all that, etc. In the post AI world, all these things will happen. The information will be kept in multiple microsites, and bots and some APIs will just go and crawl the data, and they will be able to do it so well that you possibly don't need to have so much of manual follow-up, etc., etc. Typical Senate meeting or the board meeting, the director or the vice chancellor or the deans have to kind of spend several hours, several days, ensure that everything is there, the report is prepared, and the charts are made, etc. I think they all will get automated in the next couple of years. So as of that particular day when the Senate meeting is happening or the board meeting is happening, you would know exactly what is the last minute session. And you will have a dashboard, which will have lots of greens, hopefully, and a few reds. And this is completely possible. So in a sense, the entire corporate governance monitoring mechanism will become far simpler thanks to AI. Okay, so that is a nice thing. And in fact, to be frank, some of them might lead to so much of automation that some of the positions may become redundant. You actually don't need so many people tending to the data. The data tending will happen. So already, Mr. Ajay Nanavati has been the chairman of Syndicate Bank. Some of the bank boards, thanks to core banking, those things have happened. Right? You have thousands and tens of thousands of branches, but you actually know what is the branch level performance as of yesterday, today, things like that. So this is what is the first part of it. But the second part is a little touchy. Because what happens is today now, the level of corporate governance has enhanced. So people talk about triple balance sheet. People talk about environmental issues, climate warming. So Bangalore used to be exactly like the backdrop of Ajay throughout Bangalore just about 20 years back. But today, possibly it is there only in pockets. So it is important to see what happens is, I as a professor, I as a head of the department, I as a principal or a vice chancellor would feel very happy that our students are getting a much better salary. They all can afford a car, they can drive around. So we feel happy. But somewhere along, we should also realize in the process, we are adding to much more of pollution, much more of emission. Are we leading to a sustainable way of living? So maybe at the micro level, we have done a great job. But as a citizen of a planet, you are doing a lousy job. So I'm not saying we should stop, but how do you ensure that people travel only when necessary, or people pollute less? Maybe we have electric vehicles as an option. So those are the larger issues. But I'm going to take one example which will drive home the point, which is contextual. See, I am the president of a university. I get a call from law enforcement authorities saying that, look, please track your students. Find what they do, where they hang out, what kind of message they send, whom are they in touch with, what are their social media posts. Do a sentiment analysis to find out how they are going and share this information with me. If I am the president of a university, see, today, technically, most of these things are possible. No big deal. With tens of thousands of students, I can do. But when I pass on this information, the chances are that some student may get arrested by the government. This has actually happened. I'm not taking names, so you all know what I'm talking about. So what are the issues of privacy? What happens to data privacy? And then what kind of information I kind of gather, what kind of information I analyze, what kind of information I transfer to people. These are all, we are getting into issues of ethics, morality. And to me, these are the larger corporate governance issues that are being And now today what happens is that technologically lots of things are possible, but we actually do not know what are the implications. And that actually leaves a big question mark. And these are all problems for which you not only you don't have a solution, no one in this planet has a solution. Because what should be your approach? What is right? What is wrong? Some of these questions, which possibly we have answered for many years in other contexts, in this kind of context, and of course, you might have seen about fake news, etc. Those are all but these are the real stuff. So to me, some of the hard questions of corporate governance are actually, because simpler ones are getting solved, they become a hygiene factor. So we will actually spend more time discussing these things. As an academic, of course, I have a nice feeling, because when nobody has a solution to your problem, that means there's more scope for research, right? So I'm in business. Okay, so that is what makes me happy. But this is what is happening. So some of the issues of corporate governance, which we will be talking about in the next 3 to 5 years, for which we need to come up with new solutions. Existing old solutions will not work. Because data privacy, at some point in time, we, the computer guys, have put a few things. But I think that is not sufficient, because it is getting much harder. Because in today's world, the cameras are looking at you all over. Okay, so how do you ensure that cameras are kind of not dumb enough to look at everything and transfer everything else? So we need to have those kind of things built in. As I said, we don't have an answer, but this is what it is. To summarize, AI and generative AI particularly in today's world is making some of the simpler problems of corporate governance simpler, almost automatable. But some of the hard questions are being raised, and they are getting to be much harder. And that is what makes it exciting. Maybe I'll stop here. Thank you. Thanks, Ajay.
Thank you, Professor. So, I think you have really hit some of the big concern areas. And again, I think the point that you made about some of the challenges, there's been a big debate recently about, AI becoming like the Wild West, sort of a free for all. And the concerns that, like you see in the old science fiction movies, that we won't run them, they'll run us. The system will run us and manage us. So in the context of corporate governance, and you talked about privacy, et cetera, one of the big issues that, again, in the academic context, like you talked about, student admissions or tracking student behavior or tracking students on the campus, et cetera, et cetera. So besides the privacy aspect of it, what about issues, there will be also issues of sort of inherent biases, and, that as the old saying goes, garbage in, garbage out, and so because these are sort of self-learning, is there any danger of, like, for example, when I applied for a college admission, somebody sat there, looked through my application, gave me points for stuff other than my academic results, et cetera, et cetera. So do you feel that that there's a possibility of sort of biases creeping in when you automate these processes using AI in academia? And if so, how can they be possibly addressed or resolved?
Okay, excellent question, Ajay. These fears are not unfounded. They are real. And already you have seen biases kind of happening. But Ajay, you know me for long. At least for me, I am an incorrigible optimist. As an incorrigible optimist, I somehow feel that people will actually realize that some of these things, once in a while, accidents do happen. But otherwise, I think people have more interesting things to do than faking. People have more interesting things to do than unnecessarily getting into others. So certain amount of maturity will become part of our lifestyle, particularly at the corporate governance level, so that it is a self-imposed discipline that we all will put on ourselves, and then we follow. You see, all that I normally give the example is take a look at we all keep flying every day, right? So as we come out of the plane, on the conveyor belt, the boxes are moving. So technically speaking, X can take Y's back, but quite often they don't, simply because you have better things to do. Okay. So I think the larger purpose will ensure that these kind of irritants will go away. But honestly speaking, yes, the fear is real, and we make the fears worse because we can do it so fast. See, the only difference between wherever you get the computer science guys, we guys come, we do it incredibly fast. So our ability to do damage much faster is much higher. That's the only problem which we have. But I'm an incorrigible optimist. I do think that we'll get over. Thank you.
All right, Professor. We'll come back later after each of the panelists has had a chance to share their perspectives, and we'll come back with some more probing questions. With that, I'd like to now invite my friend Gopi to share with us his thoughts. I mean, he has worn multiple hats, as was given in the introduction, from being, the Chief Technology Officer of India's largest corporate group, to being an entrepreneur, and to having been with a sort of multinational research and development center. So Gopi, you probably seen it. You're yourself a PhD, and so I'd like to hear your thoughts on how do you see how do you think this is going to impact the area of how is AI going to impact corporate governance?
Thank you, Ajay, and those of you who know me and Ajay know that Ajay has been part of every step I've taken. So part of it was Ajay. What I think I bring to this conversation is with the Tata Group, I was on the board of some 7 group companies. So a lot of focus on governance as well as social responsibility and environmental responsibility. And my master's and PhD actually in 1990 used AI, and I continue to do that even in my in my current company. So bringing those two perspectives together, I agree with Sadgopan. Of course, I'm an optimist as well. And I also think technology will make it better. There are things to watch out, but technology will make it better. To Sadgopan's example of the bag in the conveyor belt, people are more worried about the cameras that will anyway track them. And so hence they keep their hands off the bags is the way I think. But few points from a governance standpoint and boards. I think today actually I'm coming out of a board meeting. It's more readily available, all the knowledge at your fingertips, even inside the boardroom, sitting in the boardroom and using a phone as well. So when you're looking at some recommendations, you can pick up best practices, you can get new ideas, and you can get company-based past information. You can also get company-based strategy and competitor analysis sitting right there, so that you can inform your decisions and you can inform your comments on certain proposals put in front of you. And in addition, of course, the laws of the land are very much at your fingertips. Global trends are at your fingertips. So from a ability to contribute in the board, I think the whole capability has increased 10x for every individual just by use of large language models, whatever it be that you use. You can use OpenAI's ChatGPT, but you can also use the Bing, you can use Microsoft if we are more concerned about being within the corporate environment and data and so on. But also I want to spend little time on the regulations to Sadgopan's comments as well. The European Union regulations, for example, which are being formed and launched, have a few very critical aspects which I would like to mention. So things like emotion detection are not allowed. Especially in education, in healthcare, and in policing. You cannot detect emotion. Face detection, even police cannot use a positive list of faces to detect people in public spaces. So you cannot use face recognition even if you're police in Europe. The reason is simple. If you have 98% accuracy, which is the best AI can offer. Even in the near future, it will be the best case scenario. 2% of several hundreds of thousands of people is a large number. So you'll be putting a lot of people into inconvenience and situations if you're going to use face detection for trying to find certain people that you'd like. Of course, there might be other places where in other regions you would use it for the same purpose, but I know that the other countries will follow European Union norms. So that's one end of the spectrum where regulations are taking personal privacy as the core of the formulation of regulation. The other end of the spectrum, maybe in a positive way still, is Japan, where they said that any data which is input into a AI model is not covered under copyright, because there is nothing which is being publicly consumed. It's going internal. So as long as you're not breaking some other law, you're not stealing the data in some way, it doesn't come under copyright. Even the output, if it doesn't come close enough to somebody else's output, it doesn't violate copyright. So that's again a very intelligent way of ensuring that the businesses can thrive and not get impeded. So you can see that one end is about the citizen, the other end is about the businesses, and they're not necessarily in conflict. So I'll summarize by saying that we're in a stage where all the good actors better get on the train with AI. The train has left the station because it's going to be anyway used by the bad actors. It's better that all of us get in, put in the right regulations, and also detect bad events and stop them at a very early stage. Just like the internet has opened up a great economy and has made us much better people in terms of knowledge sharing, in terms of health and wealth and so on, AI is going to create probably a 10x more opportunity of the same kind. And just like internet, also the web has a dark web where all kinds of things happen, with Ajay, you and I don't participate in. And there are laws to take care of that. There will also be a new slew of things which will happen, which we need to take care. Many of the laws which exist today are sufficient to address some of the things that even AI will bring out. It's just that AI is a tool. So faking and misrepresenting or trying to be somebody else, there are already laws which prevent that. So to be able to apply them to AI means that certain nuance modifications need to happen. But I think we're on a good journey, and I'm like Professor Sadgopan, optimistic that we'll save up some time that you and I can go for a beer.
So, Gopi, I think you obviously, all of us on this panel, we are all people who come from a particular sort of a mindset. You seem to have a lot of faith in regulatory oversight. I'm not sure I necessarily share the same level of confidence. To me, I believe, especially in the Indian context, we are very good at finding ways around laws. That's a core competency of many of my fellow countrymen. So to me, you talk about Europe, you talk about Japan, again, there is a history, the Japanese are known to be more ethical. Europeans are known to be, in many cases, more ethical, etc., etc. I'm not saying in a broad brush way, but generally. So, my concern continues to be, and I would like to get your insight, is regulation adequate? I mean, even in the context of corporate governance, one of the things that I often say, you've heard me use that phrase, niti versus niyat. You can have all kinds of laws, but if the intent is not honorable, you'll always find a way around those laws. So do you feel that regulation by itself will be an adequate deterrent, or you need more than just regulatory controls? And to what extent can regulation truly control bad behavior? Because the scope of bad behavior now becomes at a whole different level to what it was, in a sort of in a manual environment, or even in a IT type environment. Here you're talking about at a whole different scale and level and speed, and the impact can be so much greater than a little chori done in a board, somebody doing a favor to a related party, those kinds of things. But here it can be a whole different scale of impact. What's your take on how effective can regulation truly be, and can we count on regulation to actually manage behavior?
Yeah, absolutely not manage behavior, Jay. At the same time, I think you have an 80% solution with the right regulations. Just like today, you have significant damage caused by cyber attacks, including ransomware. And people have actually paid up in large companies to protect data of their clients, because otherwise they would be even in larger losses. Like you said, in India, for example, if you're attacked and there is a ransomware, there is a way we look at things. There are things which were silent on from a law standpoint. In certain other countries, it's illegal to pay ransom even. So there will be nuanced differences like that. India will come out with its AI regulations in June, and it will learn from various countries and how they have put it out. But I believe that India's regulations should cater to jobs. Just like Japan catered to business and Europe catered to data privacy. While those are important as well in India, I think India should regulate in a manner that creates jobs. Now, to your specific question, I think you look at patent law. So India is good. We respect IP, we respect patents. We don't go and go outside of the law and do certain things. And the reason for that is the players are players who are accountable to the government and visible, and also more educated. So I think that there will be big issues, there will be big attacks, just like you had extremely big, large ransomware attacks and issues. So that will only increase also 10x, but the benefits will increase 100x. So we'll have to balance that out.
Okay, thanks, Gopi. Again, we'll come back after we've all had the first round just to ask a few more probing questions. With that, now I will go to Samir. Samir, you do this for a living. This is your bread and butter, as you pointed out to me the other day. And obviously, you consult with many companies. You have seen. Most of us come from a limited view. You have sort of a broader view because you are involved in consulting and advising so many companies. So could you share with us what are you picking up? What are the trends that you are seeing happening? How are you seeing how are companies that you consult with reacting to this? Are they reacting positively? Are they concerned? Are they neutral? What are you picking up as you talk to your client, your customers?
So thank you, Ajay. And first of all, it's a pleasure to share the stage with you, Gopi and Professor. I have an opportunity of, I would say, interacting with all of you at, I would say, separate platforms and all. But I think I have this response on a pretext and as a context. The pretext is, and I say that with no qualms, AI is not for the faint-hearted. Because for the first time, we are looking at with this lens that, look, this will revolutionize, reimagine, or change the way we work, interact, behave, and transact. And we have seen that, first of all, in our daily lives as well, and in the professional spheres as well. And there is a theory which is attached to this. The theory is a bit provocative, but let me say that human beings are predictably irrational. And I'm not saying that. Mr. Dan Ariely, who wrote a book, Predictably Irrational, said it with a very clear hypothesis. And the hypothesis is, as a human being, we take about 60-odd decisions on any given day. Let's take in a corporate scenario that we are taking decisions in terms of, okay, what's the annual plan we need to hit, or what kind of a set of, I would say, products or SKUs we would like to launch, and what are those larger objectives as a talent or a team we need to kind of, let's say, frame. Now, the fact of the matter is, majority of these decisions in the corporate or in the organizations or enterprises being taken by hunch, intuition, hearsay, and going by historical evidences, even in the boardrooms. Let's face it, largely I'm saying. But the fact of it is that whether it's AI analytics or this whole aspect of data management is throwing a simple pattern that, look, this has happened in the past. And with the ability of now cloud, ability of, let's say, quantum computing, the speed at which data is being churned has really become unprecedented, which means machines are becoming smarter day by day. So there is then a situation over there, which I paraphrase that few years back when I used to consult senior leaders and CXOs about analytics or AI, and I use analytics AI in the same continuum because it's a subset of, I would say, maturity of enterprises, how they would like to see. This is how it used to be, that we are data rich, information poor, insight starved. I'll say it again, data rich, information poor, insight starved. Can you help us take, these problems to the next level? Now, what's happened with AI, suddenly this problem solving at scale has become decision making at scale. And which is where exactly what Gopi and Professor were trying to mention, that for the first time, if I call it that way, there is a rallying cry amongst the boards, enterprises to make the organization AI enabled, if not AI first. Now, of course, that's a rallying cry. What it means largely is simple, that every part of the value chain of functions, be it supply chain, strategy, HR, or let's say operations or marketing, needs to have embedded data points which can start taking decision on its own, which means the sum total of the data which has gone in terms of making this happen needs to be tweaked, which also leads for the organization to change the way they transact, change the way they kind of look at their new value chains. And which is where the worry side or the concern side is coming. How does it help in terms of they operating in this new scenario? Now, the fact over there is that, let me give some examples out there. Now, fintech, when they started challenging the banking, what the government did was, look, we will create a sandbox environment where the sum total of the data will go, and whatever kind of, let's say, new models, new kind of, let's say, techniques around AI you want to kind of implement, put that in the sandbox, which is like the data, which is like the whole piece around caveats, assumption. You want to create a new kind of underwriting or credit scoring mechanism, put that over there, so that the government, or rather this government body, can actually watch what's happening over there. And this is exactly what the other regulatories on the insurance side or the telecom side is trying to do. They're trying to create a very nice regulatory environment to kind of make it happen. But the fact over there, which is where it hinges on the privacy and sometimes what we call in the language of AI, models hallucinating, is a challenge of not today, it's a challenge of the past, because some of the data in the past have been what we call a bit biased, a bit influenced, which sometimes starts throwing results in a very adverse environment, which is where today there is a gap between how the boards are kind of conceptualizing AI versus how the functional leaders are seeing it across enterprise, which is where to the part I keep on saying that, look, the evangelization and building AI fluency needs to happen all across level. And it's very, very contextualized to an enterprise ability to see what extent of AI they would be implementing over there. I'll just take a pause over there, Ajay.
Okay, so again, as usual, you captured the essence. You made a comment that it's not for the faint of heart. But in many ways, the horse has bolted that you can't put the genie back in the box. So whether you are faint of heart or not, it's there. So my question to you is that as you talk to corporates, the general perception, and myself included, look at this as some sort of a silver bullet. It's a magic wand that will solve all problems. So when you talk to your corporate clients, what is their one or two wishes? What do they say that this is the area that I need, where I believe this can add value?
Well, I think very interesting question, because the first of all, whatever we are talking about warrants a very large investment, Ajay. because it's not about just tools. It's not about cloud costs. It's not about technology. It's sum total of a lot of other, I would say, peripheral cost. So that's one, which means the ability for the boards or senior leaders to decide whether they want to go full out in terms of AI implementation is not an easy decision. But if we just take a bit of prelude over there, I think the challenge today, which is coming, is one, the POCs or minuscule experiments with many of the enterprises are trying is not stitched to the overall vision, what that particular company would like to do as a part of AI implementation. Because over there, the way larger organizations which are AI enabled think versus organizations which are taking particular use cases, there is a very marked differentiation in terms of the former versus latter. Now, to the point what you really asked, I think it's a quintessential aspect of saying, look, can AI start providing efficiencies and effectiveness in whatever operations they're doing? Can it really look at, impacting the business metrics, be it on the supply chain, be it on the operations, be it on the customer acquisition side, and can it be quantified? Now, the fact over there is that this word quantification, or what I call ROI from AI, is still not benchmarked. There is no metrics today, and I say that with no qualms, by any, I would say, marquee consulting or even I would say tech firms, which says that you measure these kind of scenarios of AI and this is the ROI you get. Because the fact over there is that it's a factorial of the maturity of each and every enterprise and how nuanced they are doing in terms of AI implementation.
Okay, great. So again, in the interest of time, I'm going to just have a couple of questions which I'm going to open up to all three of you to jump in with. And I would request the audience to start posting any questions that they may have on the chat group. So we are ready to respond to them. We've got about 20 minutes left. So the one question that I want to throw to all three of you really is that, and I speak again from a personal perspective of somebody who's in many ways technologically dated. Is there any likelihood that this may actually end up creating a greater digital divide? Is there a likelihood that you're going to have the haves and the have-nots and the knows and the not knows? Is there a danger that that might happen and some will get left behind in the dust, whereas others who are savvy will be able to ride off? So is there a danger of this potentially creating an even greater digital divide, even at board levels, where I've said I know a lot of board members, my colleagues, who are not tech savvy, and there are others who are very tech savvy. So are we going to create two classes of citizens? So I'll open this up to all three of you, and maybe each of you could just briefly sort of comment, if you can, again, in the interest of time. Sadagopan, you want to kick it off?
Okay, quick yes and no. And what I would say is that the technology will not be so difficult for people to master that people will get left behind. But those who do not take any effort at all, they will actually be left behind. Okay? So in some sense, what happens is we are not creating a new divide by creating a huge barricade. In fact, the tools of AI are sometimes faster than, jokingly, I say faster than Excel macro, right? So in that sense, the tools are available, but I think it is also the necessary part of the end users, the board members, etc., to be willing to learn to use, learn to experiment. If that is not there, they will be left behind. That's my take. Thank you.
Gopi, Samir?
Yeah, I can go, Ajay. I totally agree with Professor Sadgopan. I think the divide has always been and will continue to be between learners and folks who have stopped learning and who become an expert, right? So it is very dangerous to become an expert and then stop learning, is how I would look at it. Because the tools, for example, you can speak into ChatGPT window, just like I've seen in countries where it's difficult to write because of the nature of the writing, or in rural India where people do not know writing, they use WhatsApp and use messages, voice messages, rather than writing. So they use technology in their own way, and they do it well. So I think there will be a divide primarily by people who will say no to this tool because I'm a purist and I need to do it in a particular way and I will not take help. And then they will do things 10x slower. So that divide will be there. But yeah, there will be areas where the digital divide might also be created at a very advanced spot, not just the use of large language models for something simple, but just like you have today a issue of people who can invest in the stock market because they're knowledgeable about the stock market, and people who have no clue and their money doesn't grow. Similarly, you will have issues if you of a digital divide in some pockets.
Okay. Samir?
I think I'll just take from where Gopi left. Yes, I think if largely we take from a geographical level, there is a supremacy being established by different countries. As we speak, about 68 countries already have their AI policy, not only in making, but they're trying to implement, which is very clear indication that it will trickle down in terms of how enterprises also look at AI. But just the fact over there is that I think if we just take an aggregation of everyone viewpoints, AI is a revolution. It's not even in the making, it's a revolution kind of a thing. And when a revolution happens, we've all seen that in the past through the various cycles, a revolution will always upends the industries. And what gets first really, I would say, come as a jolt is at the board, or I would say as a CXO level, which is where exactly what Gopi said, look, it's not a scenario in terms of who's an expert, it's a scenario where we are all learning. Because what gets thrown with just chat GPT is just a tip of the iceberg. Wait till, let's say, Sora comes in, which is a text to video and video to image. So this multimodal possibilities, as we call it, will be immense. And a lot of that applications will be used at the board and the senior leaders level. And which is a matter of time how they take these, I would say, tools, applications to define their moats and competitive advantage for the enterprises.
Okay, great. So one last question, and then I will move on to the Q&A from the audience. You know, the other concern that I have, and I know Sadhugopan touched upon it, the whole sort of the ethical aspect of it. You know, my concern is, I remember when, you know, when Excel came out, or even today when I sit in on boards, there's often a sort of perception, oh, the Excel spreadsheet says so, so it must be true. You know, who am I to question it? So, I mean, my concern is that will board directors end up throwing their brains out of the window and say that, hey, the system says so. Who the hell am I to argue with it? Or who the hell am I to question it? The system knows better than I know. So how dare I even question it? And could this potentially end up in directors becoming redundant? I might be out of a job. I lose my sitting fees, and so I'm saying that facetiously, but is there a danger of that happening, that people, the board director was sitting in the boardroom and say, the system says so, it must be correct. Who am I to question it? Is there any danger of us throwing our brains out of the window and just taking what it says as gospel truth?
If I can
Ajay, I will
Yes.
make a provocative statement.
Yes, sir.
If the directors take that kind of a view, that, I don't even apply my mind, and then, I blindly go with what it is, they are redundant. There is no question of they becoming redundant. They are redundant. That's my view. Okay.
No point. And the Sadhugopan point is well taken, but I'm just saying that, there are people who are not necessarily technical savvy, and they will tend to be biased or overwhelmed and say that, if the system is, it's like the old days of Excel spreadsheets. I still sit in on board meetings, and if somebody throws a screenshot on the screen of an Excel spreadsheet and says the data says so, so it must be true, So
Yeah.
that's where I was coming from.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I all that I would say is that I am again incorrigible optimist. I had people who said that, look, unless they get a passbook printed, even though there is a printout available of your bank account, they will not believe it. Okay. But luckily, what happened was their sons and daughters taught their dad. We can't teach them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, Gopi, Samir, Gopi.
Yeah, so the good thing about AI is the bad thing is that it works in latent spaces, as you know, and latent spaces are those spaces what they call as parameters, which people talk about trillion parameters and so on. They're imprecise, so they're designed to be imprecise so that they're collecting information. So if we ask to create a bio about Ajay Nanavati, it'll do a great job. 90% of it will be accurate. 10% will make you, go to, I don't know, a university in Australia or something like that, what it thinks you should have probably done, or make you a movie star, which may be based on your image. I mean, it will do that 10% of things which Samir rightly called as hallucinations, but it is actually a term used for what gives AI its strength, the impreciseness, because it is meant to give you inputs to the best of its ability based on all the data it has crunched and what it is linking as appropriate for your query. Now, as long as we know that and we train people that it is imprecise, then people will use it as input only for and question, make sure that they triangulate beyond the one tool that they use. If they're not doing that, like Sadgopan said, then they're not good at their profession.
And I'll just take it from where Gopi left Ajay. I think it's an inflection point between human and machine rebalancing today. That's a fact. And it's also throwing up a question, what we call is wisdom better than the speed? Now, the fact over there is that now wisdom comes from the brain's working with a pattern accumulated over the years of experience. And the speed is I would say, manifestation of the data which has gone in from last so many years and say, look, I can throw quick turnaround result. And I just have one thing over there. What if the system crashes? The brain doesn't stop functioning, but the system may have some glitches, may have some malfunctioning. Now, I think that's the exact, I would say, differentiation between what I call the machines versus humans. I'll just stop at that.
Okay, great. So I've seen a few questions, and again, in the interest of time, I'm not necessarily going to be able to go through to every one of the questions that was raised. But what I will do is have each of you go around and tell me what, from a corporate governance perspective, what are the 2 or 3 optimum use cases where it can actually work? No, so for example, somebody asked this question about from a predicting, one of the questions was, can AI assist boards in predicting and adapting for future market trends or disruptions? So similarly, so can each of you maybe just give 2 or 3 use cases where you think it would be most applicable and most relevant?
Okay. So Ajay,
So,
I will start.
Sorry to interrupt. Areas like risk management, or I don't know, audit committees, NRC committees, risk committees. So just 2 or 3. What do you think are the best examples of use cases where AI can be used in corporate boards?
Okay, I will just take one example, Ajay.
Mm-hmm.
That it's interesting. Even in a premier institutes, while we have a large number of students, so some of this stuff, like people performing exceptionally well, or sometimes people sulking, we get to know much later, by which time we can't do much. But thanks to AI, we'll be able to do it far, far ahead. So a simple example is, we have to sometime decide to kind of ask the student to leave. But that was not something that just happened one day, but it happened in one Senate meeting. But it was actually cooking over a period of 3 years, and the system just did not capture it. So I think if I can kind of guide a student much early and get him back to the track, I would feel far happier, right? So that is the last opportunity. All the data was there, but we simply did not have a mechanism to do it. I think that is my use case. Thank you.
Thank
One
you.
use case. Yeah.
Gopi.
Yeah, so Ajay, I think with appropriate guardrails, so by guardrails, I mean you can use the same AI which is in all the open tools out there, but put in the guardrails based on your company documentation. You can do a lot, but I'll pick three, like you said. One is you can develop a strategy meaningfully and document it and iterate on it and take inputs from your strategic guides, be it board members or management, input those in and iterate and so on. And you can cut down the time required for everything else other than discussion, so that you're discussing and making sure that the time is wisely spent. And you can even estimate the cost for certain activities. You can figure out how to reduce the cost. You can figure out what is the best investment based on this. So all these things can be done very well in strategy. Similarly, in IP generation and management, right from looking at past literature, and there is again guardrailed information like Consensus is the tool which uses OpenAI, and all the papers which are out there are there. You can use additional tools outside of AI also, like patent search, and input it in and get newer ideas as well, which is the hallucination, which actually in this case will help you think through whether actually does this make sense technically. And then use that as a starting point, at least for IP generation and management. Finally, I think one of the areas which needs to go away is reporting, minuting, and documenting. All of that can be done so well between 2 or 3 tools, between AI tools as well as something like a Grammarly. It can do a fantastic job. The danger there is it won't be for our generation, but for the next generation to be unable to write anything. So we have to balance it. So those are the 3 areas: strategy, IP, and reports.
Great. Thank you, Gopi. Samir.
Let me build 4, 5, 6 in a very quick turnaround time, Ajay. Again, taking from where Gopi left. One is, of course, really as a validation of the sum total of decisions what the board has taken over the previous years or historical year. More like a yardstick, whether they are relevant or not in terms of the decision. And that's something AI can do for the boards very quickly. Second, you rightly touched upon for the industries which are very susceptible to the risk side, specifically in the scenario where laws, risk, regulation, fraud, anomalies are happening every now and then. This whole aspect of predicting and really anticipating and preempting before things happen, AI can actually do at a board level, purely giving those what I call the signals before the noise, before it really goes into a rampant mode. The third is essentially this whole piece around opportunity space identification. For the organizations really looking at launching new product and services, like Tesla really uses AI to start determining what new models they need to create. Now, as a fact, what is happening, their ability to churn out every 15, 18 months a new model at the factory level is amazing. A classic car manufacturer like a Ford or a Hyundai takes about 3 to 5 years. So that's the level of, I would say, 3 aspects. If AI is able to do at the board level, I think we are talking about a very different scenario.
Okay. So again, we've got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask again, one final, again, is based on some of the questions. I'm just compiling some of the questions that I see coming up on the chat group. So, one of the questions really is that, do corporates now need to start appointing a chief AI officer? I've had this question asked often. You have at a board level, should there be a chief AI officer? And if so, who should he report to? This sounds like a very mundane, stupid question. But again, just 1 minute each. Is it time now to appoint a chief AI officer at a board level, or is that overkill? And if so, who should the CIO report to? CTO, CFO, CEO? Just a quick 1 minute each.
Okay, quick answer. First, a trivial way of ask ChatGPT this question. Okay, but to be at a more serious note, He should appoint, and he or she should report to the CEO. That's my take.
You're saying there is merit in considering
There is a
appointing
merit and
a
reporting to
dedicated
the
chief.
CEO. And of course, the CEO should also kind of use AI to ask demanding questions from this person, not appoint and forget it. You should be a demanding CEO.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Gopi, do you have plans in Mylan to have a chief, or you're probably the chief AI officer in the case of Mylan?
So Ajay, I believe that AI is part of a continuum, which is overall in the digital area. Data, IT, AI, they're a continuum. And to me, you have various titles, Chief Digital Officer, etc. Those are the roles where AI also fits in. In my view, you don't need to add an AI very specific chief CXO level person. It should be part of the either the mandate for the CDO himself or herself, or it should be part of his or her organization.
Samir, what are you picking up from your clients? Are you seeing companies wanting to start appointing this? Are they struggling where to position this role and where to park this role? What are you picking up?
Absolutely, Ajay. I think there are already too many C-suite titles already available. So let's park it for later discussion. But what's happening is, I think the companies and enterprises are very clearly identifying that each and every function today needs AI or analytics. For that matter, whether that person is a part of the board or a sum total of, I would say, head for each and every function is a different matter. But I think there is a very clear now indication coming that if this is how it would be in the time to come, where it becomes a bit more what I call pervasive, it needs to have a chief AI officer or an AI leader or AI kind of a practice head needs to have a very clear identification of influencing the top and bottom line of the organization, period. If that happens, then whether it's a role for today or for tomorrow, it will remain. Otherwise, it will just fizzle out, just being a kind of a mere, I would say, halo effect.
Okay. Wow. Guys, we covered a lot of ground. We solved a lot of the world's problems. Whenever Gopi and I get together for a beer, we sit down and we solve the world's problems. Unfortunately, nobody listens to us. But hopefully, in this case, that we have somebody who will take these insights in. And on behalf of the IIMB Center for Corporate Governance, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation for you gentlemen to carve out an hour of your busy time to share with the attendees your thoughts. Maybe we couldn't ask for a more knowledgeable group. So thank you very much for your time. And I really appreciate your candor in sharing your thoughts. Greta, back to you.
Ajay, thanks for well-run moderation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ajay. Thanks, Samir. Thanks, Gopi. And thanks the 143 people who are listening. So nice of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.